Welcome to Life Stories. Imagine pouring your heart and soul into a job, building a team that feels like family, and then, just like that, being tossed aside with nothing more than an impersonal email. What if the very people you trusted to have your back, the ones who promised they valued you, turned out to be the ones who would betray you when you needed them most? This is the story of Emma Miller, a woman who fought tooth and nail to build a career she believed in, only to lose it all in an instant. Now she faces a choice: continue down a path of disillusionment or find the strength to rise again, even when the people around her don't seem worth trusting anymore. Let's dive in and see how one woman's journey will challenge everything she thought she knew about loyalty, success, and what it really takes to lead. The sound of the keyboard clacking was the only thing that broke the silence in the early morning hours at Horizon Logistics. Emma Miller sat at her desk, staring at the email that had just arrived, her eyes glossing over the cold, sterile words that marked the end of her career. Effective immediately, it read, due to failure to maintain adequate presence during critical operational periods, your employment is terminated. It didn't take long for the message to sink in. After 5 years of building a team, working tirelessly for every milestone, every success, this was how they thanked her. She leaned back in her chair, the leather creaking under her weight. The city skyline outside the window was bathed in the first light of dawn, but Emma didn't see it. She was too focused on the words in front of her. Her father's funeral had only been 3 days ago. 3 days. That was all the company had granted her for bereavement leave. And now, because she had dared to take it, she was discarded. The suddenness of it stung, but it wasn't the first time she'd felt the sting of betrayal. Horizon Logistics, a company she had helped to soar to new heights, had never valued her the way she'd hoped. Now, they'd taken something more from her than just a job. They had taken her dignity, wrapped in an email, signed by someone who had once called her a friend. Emma didn't cry, didn't shout in rage. Instead, she picked up her phone, snapped a photo of the email, and forwarded it to her personal account. The sense of numbness settled in, and she began gathering her things. A small cactus on her desk, the framed photo of her team celebrating a major merger, the thank you cards from the people she had mentored, all of it fit neatly into the cardboard box she carried toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the empty office as the few employees who had arrived early began trickling in. Tanya, from accounting, was the first to notice. Emma, what's going on? Tanya's voice trembled with confusion as she stared at the box in Emma's hands. I've been let go, Emma replied quietly. What? But why? You've been with the company for 5 years. This doesn't make sense. Emma shook her head, her smile tinged with sadness. Apparently, attending my father's funeral wasn't a priority. Tanya's face morphed from confusion to anger, but Emma didn't want to hear it. She didn't want anyone to fight her battles. This was hers to bear alone. By the time her core team had gathered around her desk, the news was out. Jason, always the one to stand up for what was right, clenched his fists in fury. This is bullshit. I won't let them get away with this. Emma held up a hand, silencing him. It's done, Jason. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I don't need anyone to fight for me. But the words barely left her mouth when Veronica, her client relations manager, broke down in tears. The rest of the team stood there, their expressions a mix of disbelief and anger. You can't leave, Veronica cried. We need you. You're the reason we've succeeded. The weight of their words felt like an anchor, but Emma was already walking away, one step at a time. As she moved to the Human Resources office, she couldn't help but wonder if the emptiness she felt was just the start. She had poured her soul into this place, and it had torn her apart in return. Inside HR, the new HR manager, Karen Brooks, looked sympathetic but distant as she handed her the separation papers. I'm sorry about this, Emma, Karen said, her voice betraying her discomfort. I just don't understand why this happened. Emma took the papers, her eyes scanning them without a word. The severance offer was a joke. 2 weeks of pay, a non-compete clause that would tie her hands for 6 months, and a reminder of the company's right to fire her at any time for any reason. As she signed the papers without protest, Karen hesitated. "I just want to understand why this happened," Karen said softly. "Because I attended my father's funeral," Emma replied flatly. She didn't owe anyone an explanation. When she left the office and stepped into the warm September air, her phone buzzed with messages. Jason, Veronica, and the rest of the team were furious. But Emma wasn't angry. She wasn't going to fight Horizon Logistics. Not yet. Instead, she pulled her car into the parking lot and let herself sit for a moment, the weight of it all pressing down on her chest. Then her phone buzzed again. It was Hank Fleming, the CEO of Vertex Transport Systems, Horizon's largest competitor. "I've been expecting your call," Hank said, his voice warm and welcoming. "Though I must admit, I didn't expect it to come under these circumstances." Emma explained her situation, showing him the termination email. Hank's frown deepened as he listened. "That's not just bad management," he said. "That's inhumane. Bereavement leave exists for a reason. We value our people at Vertex, Emma, and you're exactly the kind of leader we need." The offer Hank extended was everything Emma had worked for. More responsibility, better pay, a chance to build something from the ground up. As she sat in her car, her hand on the steering wheel, a plan began to form. This wasn't just about moving on. It was about making Horizon Logistics regret what they'd done. How far would you go to stand up for what's right, even if it means walking away from everything you've worked for? What kind of leader would you be if you knew your worth and refused to accept anything less? By the time the weekend was over, Emma had made up her mind. She was going to take Hank's offer, but she wasn't going to stop there. She was going to build a team at Vertex, a team of people who deserved to be treated with respect, people who weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, people who, like her, knew their worth. But as Emma prepares to join Vertex and build her new life, will she be able to escape the shadow of Horizon Logistics? And what will happen when her former team members follow her lead, leaving the company in chaos? The first few days at Vertex were a blur. Emma had hoped for a fresh start, but even the shiny new office space, the collaborative open workspaces, and the endless opportunities didn't feel like enough to shake the weight of everything that had happened. She settled into her new role as division director with precision, her mind consumed with the task at hand. Every meeting, every email, every strategy session was a reminder of how much she had to prove, both to herself and to the team she was now building. But the first real breakthrough came when she called her former colleagues at Horizon, the team that had once been hers, the ones who had followed her to Vertex. They were thriving. They were excited, motivated, and ready to move on. Yet, a part of Emma still felt that hollow ache every time she thought of them. The faces that had once filled her office, the people who had stood by her through every challenge. It wasn't that she regretted her decision to leave. It was that she still couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unresolved. A week into her new position, a message came through on her phone. It was a text from Veronica, one of her closest team members at Horizon. "We need to talk." Emma stared at the message for a moment. Her heart raced, uncertainty gnawing at her. Veronica had been one of the first to express outrage when Emma was let go. She had stood by her, a fierce advocate for her, and now, months later, something had shifted. They met at a small cafe, a quiet corner booth away from the busy lunch crowd. Veronica's eyes were red, her expression uneasy. Emma noticed immediately. It was the look of someone holding back, as if there was something deeper beneath the surface. "What's going on?" Emma asked, her voice soft but firm. She already had a sinking feeling she wasn't going to like what she was about to hear. "I don't know how to say this, Emma," Veronica began, her hands trembling slightly as she fiddled with her coffee cup. "But there's something I've noticed. Things aren't the way they seem at Vertex. You've built something great here, but—" "But?" Emma leaned in, her heart tightening with a mix of concern and curiosity. Veronica hesitated. "The people here, Emma. The team you built. They're not the same. They're changing. Emma's chest tightened. What do you mean? They're losing their spark. The passion we had when we were at Horizon, it's not here anymore. It's like they've forgotten what we were fighting for. A wave of guilt crashed over Emma. She had worked so hard to move forward, to build something better, something where people were valued. She had thought Vertex would be the perfect place for that. But now, Veronica's words echoed in her mind, and Emma couldn't ignore the growing suspicion that maybe, just maybe, she had been so focused on creating something new that she had overlooked what her team really needed. "You're saying they're not happy here?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's more than that," Veronica continued, her eyes flickering with concern. "I'm not sure what's happening, but it feels like something's shifting. Hank, he's not what we thought he was." Emma's breath caught in her throat. Hank Fleming, the man who had offered her everything, new opportunities, a fresh start. He had been the one who had seemed different, the one who understood the value of people. But now, Veronica's words cast doubt. Was he just another leader who cared more about numbers than about the people who made the company thrive? "Hank?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" Veronica lowered her voice, glancing around the cafe as if making sure no one was listening. "There have been rumors, Emma, about Hank's past dealings, about how he's built his empire. It's not as clean as you think. He's promised us the world, but what's the price?" Emma's heart began to race. She had been so determined to leave Horizon behind, so focused on proving herself here. But now, the foundation she had been building seemed shaky. The very man she had trusted was now casting a shadow of doubt over everything she had worked for. "You're telling me this now?" Emma's voice was tinged with disbelief. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" Veronica looked down, her eyes filled with regret. "I didn't know. I thought things would be different here. But it's the same cycle, Emma. We're just another cog in the machine." A silence fell over the table as Emma processed what she had just heard. Her mind spun with thoughts, doubt, fear, uncertainty. She had been so sure that leaving Horizon would be the key to her redemption, the fresh start she so desperately needed. But now, she was faced with the painful truth. Had she made the same mistake again? Had she traded one toxic environment for another? The weight of the realization pressed down on her. She wasn't sure what the next step would be. Should she confront Hank? Should she try to fix what was happening at Vertex? Or was it already too late? And yet, amidst the turmoil, Emma knew one thing for certain. She couldn't let herself fall back into the same cycle. No matter where she went, she had to remain true to the values she had fought for all these years, the values that had made her the leader she was. She had to find a way to lead with integrity, to build something that truly mattered. But could she do that when the very system she had trusted seemed to be crumbling around her? Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like the dream you were chasing suddenly turned into a nightmare? Will Emma confront Hank and risk everything she's built, or will she leave Vertex behind and search for something better? The answer to those questions loomed in Emma's mind as she stood up, her resolve hardening. She knew she couldn't wait much longer. The clock was ticking, and the decisions she made next would shape her future and the future of her team forever. As she walked out of the cafe, her phone buzzed again. It was Hank. He was calling. And she knew, deep down, that this conversation would change everything. What would Emma do now? Would she confront Hank about the rumors, or would she choose a different path? And what would it mean for the future of her team? Stay tuned to find out. The air in Emma's office was still, the hum of the fluorescent lights above the only sound. The window in front of her framed a view of the city, the streets busy and alive with movement, life going on, just as it always had. But inside her, things were different. The weight of the decision she had made, the call she had taken from Hank Fleming, was settling on her like an anchor. She had heard the desperation in his voice, a man who now, more than ever, needed her. But it wasn't just about needing her. It was about control. The conversation had been telling in a way she hadn't expected. Emma, I know you've heard the rumors, Hank had said, his voice tight, his words clipped. I didn't want you to find out like this. The truth is, I've made decisions I'm not proud of, but I'm trying to build something here, something big. I need you to trust me. But how could she trust him? How could she continue in this world of calculated power plays and corporate promises that seemed to crumble under the weight of truth? Everything she had built, everything she had worked for, was beginning to feel like a mirage. She had learned that trust was something you earned, not something you were expected to give away on a whim. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jason, one of her first calls after she'd left Horizon. He had stood by her side when everything fell apart, and now he was checking in. Is it worth it? Jason's message read. You've got the power, Emma, but is it the right fight? She didn't have an answer. Not yet. The team at Vertex had been a lifeline. They had been her second chance, the fresh start she had dreamed of. But now, with Hank's confession weighing on her, she couldn't help but wonder if she was once again walking into another trap, another cycle of manipulation disguised as opportunity. She stood up from her desk and walked over to the window, the cool glass against her hand offering little comfort. Her father's words echoed in her mind, the words she had tried to push away in the whirlwind of everything that had happened. The rocks stay steady, girl. While the river rushes by, let the current do its work. Her father had always been the steady presence in her life. He had taught her patience, resilience. He had shown her that sometimes the best way to face the storm was to remain firm, to hold your ground while everything else seemed to change. Was she doing that now? Or had she been swept up by a current she couldn't see? The door opened softly, breaking her reverie. It was Veronica, her face tense, her eyes scanning Emma's office before locking onto her. Veronica hadn't been happy at Vertex. She had tried to hide it, but Emma could see it in her eyes. Veronica was struggling, and it was starting to affect the team. I don't know if this is what we thought it would be, Veronica said, her voice raw with emotion. We're growing, sure, but at what cost? Emma met her gaze, unsure of how to respond. She had been so focused on fixing things for herself, for her team, that she hadn't stopped to ask whether this was the right path. Was the cost of success worth the cost of their happiness? I've been talking to the others, Veronica continued, her hands shaking slightly as she placed a folder on Emma's desk. They're not happy here. They don't feel like they're valued, Emma. They're not getting what they need, and it's affecting everything. Clients are noticing. The internal systems are falling apart because they're not trained properly. And Hank, he's not the person we thought he was. Emma's heart sank. It was happening again. The same pattern she had seen at Horizon was playing out here. Only this time, she was the one responsible for her team's well-being. How had she not seen it sooner? The team had come to expect the same thing from their leaders. Ruthless ambition masked as vision, numbers valued more than people. Had she really done enough to change that? Or had she merely set up a different stage for the same show? She looked down at the folder Veronica had placed before her. Inside was an email from a client, the Wilson account. The subject line read, Urgent, need immediate attention regarding account. Emma's eyes scanned the message. The tone was tense. The client unhappy with the lack of follow-through from the Vertex team. It was the breaking point. Emma had to make a choice. She couldn't let her team fall into the same cycle of disillusionment. But what could she do? She had spent so much time rebuilding her career, her sense of purpose. Was she willing to tear it all down again to start from scratch? Her phone buzzed again, and this time, it was Hank. I need to see you. There's something I haven't told you, Hank's message read. We need to talk about the future. Her pulse quickened. He had known the gravity of the situation, had sensed the shift in her. She had thought she could trust him, but now, more than ever, the walls were closing in. She had a choice to make. Take the easy way out, or confront the truth head-on. She stood up and grabbed her jacket, her mind racing. She had to confront Hank. It wasn't about him. It was about her. About whether she was going to keep walking this path, even when it was clear that it wasn't leading her where she wanted to go. She walked out of her office, her team's faces flashing in her mind. They deserved better. They deserved a leader who was willing to sacrifice everything to ensure they were valued. But was she willing to risk everything again? Or would she let the current of change carry her away? The elevator doors slid open, and Emma stepped inside. The lights dimmed as she pressed the button for Hank's office. As the doors closed behind her, she made a silent vow to herself. No matter the outcome, she would remain steady, like the rocks, unmovable, firm, and unyielding. What would you do if you found yourself at the crossroads between success and integrity? Do you think Emma can change the course of her team's future, or will she be swept away by the same forces that once defined Horizon? Stay tuned to see how Emma navigates the ultimate test of leadership.